Hello, everyone, and welcome to our JourneyWoman March Travel Ready webinar. We've got 3 experienced travel advisors with us tonight to talk about some trip planning and answer your questions. And we're going to get started in just a minute as let some more people come in. Let us know where you're calling in from on the chat. We're seeing people from all over the world joining us, so this is great. Both from the US and Canada, a few from Europe. So that's super to see JourneyWoman from all over North America
too.
This session is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. It's also being transcribed. And for those of you I haven't met, I'm Carolyn Ray, the CEO at JourneyWoman. If you're new to JourneyWoman, we are the original solo travel women's publication founded in 1994 by the late Evelyn Hannon. And our ethos is to empower women to travel safely and well by offering honest, objective information. So just while we're waiting for folks to join, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, which we do at all of our sessions. At JourneyWoman, we strive to be a place where all feel welcome. We are committed to creating the safest place possible with the intention of helping to unearth the true value of each person who joins this community. We wish to acknowledge that the land we are standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, and we wish to acknowledge and thank the first peoples of this territory and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land in order for us to continue our work today. Today, we are talking about preparing for travel as part of our Travel Ready series, which we launched over a year ago in December 2020. Who would have dreamed we would still be in this situation, but things are definitely looking brighter. And we have a whole section on our website, if you haven't seen it, called Travel Ready, which has all kinds of information on safety, packing, financial planning, health and wellness, and even downsizing, which I like to think I'm the queen of downsizing, but I know a lot are doing it now. And I hope if you haven't seen it, please take a look. We've also been had done another session last month on managing fear and anxiety, and I'll put that link in the chat so you can take a look at that. That was a webinar with Debbie Phillips, who is a master life coach, and Debbie's actually speaking at our upcoming Women's Travel Wisdom Retreat in October. I would like to thank our Women's Advisory Council for recommending the 3 speakers we have tonight. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and supporting this webinar through your donations. We will be taking proceeds from tonight's event and donating them to Sunflowers for Peace, an organization that is providing medical backpacks to those on the front lines in Ukraine. So I see we're getting more people coming in, which is wonderful. Welcome to everybody again. I'd like to just talk a bit about why we're doing this topic. And it really started with some surveys that we did last year, where we asked if our readers were considering using travel advisors. And we saw quite a difference between summer of last year and fall of last year. And I had my own experience with travel when I went to Spain last October using a travel advisor. And at this point, I think I've counted something like 25 flights I've been on, which I'm quite surprised by because I don't think I've been traveling as much as I used to. But I've only had issues on that one flight when I was returning from walking the Camino in Spain. And fortunately, I had used a travel advisor. So while I was out enjoying this iconic experience, my travel advisor rebooked my flight when it was canceled, found me a hotel, and by the time I walked into Santiago, everything had been looked after. So we also did an article recently on post-pandemic travel and talked about the importance of using a travel advisor for complex or out-of-country trips. And I think it's important for us to talk about now because what we're seeing every single day is all the change in travel. Every day we have changing regulations, new travel apps, testing changes, not to mention weather, natural disasters, political situations. It's a much more complex world than it was 2 years ago, one that really tests all of our patience when we make a decision to travel. So I'd like to thank the three women joining me today who are from Canada and the United States, who are here to answer all of your questions about travel insurance, travel safety, and provide their insights also on what's hot, what's not, because I think that's exciting to know too in terms of trends. Collectively, these women have over 80 years of travel experience, so they have seen it all. And I also think any business still standing after the last 2 years deserves a lot of consideration, knowing that we as small businesses have been through an unprecedented time. So let me introduce you to our three speakers. The first is Sheila Gallant-Halloran, who's the owner of Lush Life Travel in Ontario. Sheila helps mature and solo travelers live their lush life by successfully taking excellent bucket list adventures. Atop 20 years of financial risk management experience, Sheila has invested another 16 years traveling, certifying, and building her travel expertise, as well as forging relationships with top-notch travel supplier partners around the world. And I love something Sheila has in her bio, which is she calls herself a happiness actuary and works with her clients to bring them high return on life, ROL. Our second panelist is Carmelina Pirrocco-Crawford, who's a senior vacation specialist at McTavish Travel in Ontario. Carmelina has specialized in travel for almost 40 years and specializes in vacation travel, luxury, family, and romance. She has taught travel and tourism, owned her own agency, as well as helped many build theirs. Her area of expertise is custom travel, helping clients build their dream vacations, and destination weddings, adventure travel, and cruises. Our third speaker is Trish York, who's the founder of Trish York Travel in Ohio. Trish is the owner and founder of Trish York Travel, a full-service travel agency specializing in custom trips to Europe, including independent travel, river cruises, and small group travel. Prior to launching her own business in 2014, Trish spent 18 years working in international public relations and 8 years living and working in Germany. So those are our three speakers for this afternoon. And I'm sorry that took a little while to get into, but what we're going to talk about, and this is all about getting ready for the unexpected, is what is the role of a travel advisor? We're going to talk a bit about mindset, some shifts we're seeing in travel, questions you might have on your mind, and please do put them in the chat. Is it safe to travel right now? What kind of travel insurance should I buy? And all kinds of other things. So I'm going to put a poll up in a minute just to ask if you've all used a travel advisor in the past. But I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists to share what was life like for you 2 years ago when the pandemic started. Who would like to take that one on and start?
I guess I'll go. What was it like? Well, my first thought was, I'm not sure there's going to be enough alcohol in the world to get through this. We in our McTavish Travel, first thing that we had to do was get every single file, everyone traveling from March until we thought just a few weeks, but we decided to look for the next 3 months. We had to contact our clients. If they were away, we had to find them. We had to rebook flights. We had to look into getting future cruise credits, future travel credits. Then it just escalated to getting refunds through the travel insurance companies. And I will be honest, we did have a lot of clients saying that without the help of their travel agent, it would have been a lot more difficult for them to get their refunds through the travel insurance companies. So basically, we had to find everyone, fix everything, get refunds, and just try to stay in control and breathe through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And Trish, what about you?
Well, March is my busiest time of the year because most of my travel is May through September or October. So I was in the process of pretty much doing final payments on everything. I was fortunate that I only had a handful of clients that were traveling at the time. One happened to be in Morocco and Spain, and they were like, we need to get out of here. We need to get home. They were in a panic. And it took me 3 days to try to get them flights because every time I booked the flight, their connecting flight got canceled. So the doors started slamming shut on them in Europe. And when I finally got them a flight, I had to call the hotel at 4 a.m. and say, go wake them up, tell them to pack. Their driver's going to be there in 2 hours and they're flying home today. So that was my biggest issue that I dealt with. And I had one client that was in New Zealand, so I had to get them home. But most of it was being patient and having people wait. The people that were booked, of course, for April and May and June, they were like, what does this mean for me? And I think everybody wanted to start canceling because they didn't know. And we just had to be patient and just wait and see what happened. So that was a lot of managing, final payments and, their trips and watching airfare or watching the airlines and see who was going to cancel. So it was sort of a pretty big juggling act. And we, of course, never thought it would last as long as it did.
Yeah. Thank you, Trish. And Sheila, what was your world like 2 years ago?
Well, I came from probably my biggest year that I just experienced after 16 years in travel from being an actuary. Had taken a group of 75 ladies on a solo trip on the Danube in December, and we were in the midst of rebooking another repeat trip. I had forward bookings going into 20, 21, 22. Obviously, things started to shut down. We started hearing in January rumblings of what was going on. I was at a trade show, Valentine's Day in 2020, hearing about the Asian cruises and the problems that Crystal Cruises, as an example, was having because they have such a big Asian market, or they did at the time, hearing about how folks holding Chinese passports weren't going to be able to board cruises. And then, Manulife, which is the big insurer that we use, said that the COVID, the pandemic, was a known event, which changed all of insurance overnight. We had the WHO declare it a pandemic on March 11th or something. Italy shut down March 9th. So we were thrown into the middle of the biggest chaos we had ever seen. And people in travel have been through all kinds of chaos. I'm sure all these ladies here know what I'm talking about, between SARS and Ebola and terrorist attacks. We thought we had seen every kind of iteration of a problem and knew how to respond. But this became something else huge, something else very quickly. I remember I had clients going to the airport on Friday the 13th and trying to get hold of them saying, your trip's been canceled, the flights are about to be canceled, turn around and go back home. So It became dealing with that kind of stuff and handling the clients that were immediately going away on March break in Canada, which is our big spring break time, to then seeing it snowball and become something else. And of course, we had no idea what the impact was when it first started. As Carmelina said, we started thinking it was a 3-month chunk, but it's gone on for 20, 21, first part of 22. I have had over 80 bookings and easily $2 million in sales impacted by this, rolling it over, canceling it. I've had some clients with trips that in March 2020, they had 4 trips on the books. Those trips have been canceled and rebooked 3 and 4 times. Mm-hmm. So in terms of work to a travel advisor, a trip that might have taken 10 hours, now I've canceled and rebooked it 4 times. It's now 40 hours for the clients that had 4 trips instead of it being, or the 4 trips has become 16, 10 hours has become 40, and times those 16 trips is then 160 hours of work. And in a world where we are typically compensated at the end of travel, the whole travel world was thrown upside down. We were working hours and hours to protect our clients, get them home, try to save the industry, kind of became put on our shoulders. Rebook, get clients refunded, advocate for them, all with little or no revenue, all with little or no government support. So it's been a tremendous 2 years.
Yeah, I feel like we need to, have a deep breath after that one.
Yeah.
I remember grabbing all my files from the office and bringing them to my home office and putting them on the floor. Just trying to put them on the floor saying, by date. Okay, next. And then just, again, breathe and try to find and fix and take care of, because, we're here for our clients.
Well, that's a great segue. So we've had a few questions in the chat. What is the difference between a travel advisor and a travel agent? Because I know the language is there's different implications, and since you're talking already, Carmelina, maybe you could carry on with the thought of what's the difference?
I think when you start out in this business, you automatically call yourself a travel agent. And as time goes by and you end up with a lot more experience, you graduate to a travel consultant, and then you graduate to a travel advisor. I feel that it's an individual preference. For me, I specialize in all kinds of travel, so I call myself a travel specialist. But I have called myself an advisor, I've called myself an agent. The only thing that I do say is really connected to the word agent are people who book only airline tickets. Mm-hmm. So that could be considered specifically a travel agent. But at the end of the day, I think it's the label that you like to call yourself, that you feel most comfortable in.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, I think traditionally before, the agent role used to be maybe seen as an order taker of sorts. But I think as the profession has developed, we have become more of an advisor role, where we really listen to the clients and we try to match the best destination and the best travel experience to what they're looking for.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I perhaps because I come from the finance world, I gravitated towards advisor immediately. And just picking up on the points the other lady said, agent to me is very much a transactional role. You're looking for me to complete a booking or make a booking. But my role and how I work with my clients is to advise them, much as their financial advisor would advise them between a certain stock portfolio or high growth portfolio, whatever they're looking for. I help my clients figure out how they're going to, what's important to them in making decisions about their trip. And, the travel advisor's job is really to help you make the decisions. People focus on all the bits and pieces that go into a decision, where, when, and how. But the travel advisor really comes in and says, well, I know all the details and I can help you figure out which company is the right one, or which segment, or which order, or how you want to go. And it's really that advisory role that's important. I'm not just here because I'm better at Google.
I find that. Oh, sorry, ladies. I also going to what Sheila said. The other thing too is, as an advisor, when you have a client in front of you and they're trying to explain what they're looking for in their vacation, what we're also hearing is what they're really trying to say, but are not saying. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's where we always graduate to advisor or specialist or consultant, because, they may say, I want a trip to Hawaii, but they're really not wanting to go to Hawaii. They really want to go to Polynesia, and they're not saying that. So, but we hear it. Yeah. So I think that's what happens as you spend more time in this business, as you just learn to listen a little differently.
Yeah, and it's the discovery call that I have with clients. I'm sure you ladies do something comparable. It's like, oh, you want to go to Hawaii. Why do you want to go to Hawaii? Mm-hmm. What is it about that destination that's important to you? How do you see yourself structuring your days? What activities do you want to do? And by digging, you get to what Carmelita is saying about, maybe it's not Hawaii that's the trip for you. Maybe it is South Pacific or Tahiti.
So you're like a travel therapist almost.
It is. Yes. It really is. Well, travel's a great form of therapy anyway.
Oh, yes.
we become counselors, marriage counselors sometimes too, right? I don't want that role. But it's just we really have to dig, and it's not about Google. It's not because we Google better than you. We've been to the destinations. We know how to help you choose between Hawaii and Tahiti. We also have built relationships with the hotels and the partners. It's a lot more than just booking. The booking is just one small piece of the trip. It's all the conversation before we get to the booking. Then it's the booking. Then it's actually being your guardian angel when you travel and help you with all the problems that come.
Yeah. And I think you told me, Sheila, that you receive something like 100 alerts a day from different news sources. Can you explain that a little bit? What kind of information are you getting that helps you stay on top of what's happening in the world?
Sure. We get, as travel advisors, we get alerts from different companies, depending on your agency. Your agency might have different things that they subscribe to, but I get alerts throughout the day. This is the latest update on what's happening in Italy. This is what's happening in Costa Rica. This is what's happening in Hawaii. We also get total advisories from all travel newsletters, Baxter Travel, Travel Trade, different things. So we are constantly, if a travel advisor sat at their desk and worked on a file and turned off their email for an hour or two, they'd come back to easily 100 emails. 10 might be from clients and the rest are alerts and information. And we have to stay on top of that and keep abreast of that, because we have to be constantly aware of what's changing. And the world has changed so many times with COVID, entry requirements, exit requirements, testing requirements. And I think I shared with you the other day, one day we got up and, Amsterdam was closing at midnight. Okay, we have river cruise clients going tomorrow.
Our industry has its own trade papers, which is what I think most of us rely on, because it's what we do, who we are, and it's related to our business, nothing else but the travel industry. And going into what Sheila said, we do get alerts also from all the tourist boards and the hoteliers, the airlines, the government officials. They all hit our screens. Yeah. And too bad we don't have one computer that just says alerts and then the other one for us to work on.
Yeah, and you probably get all these before they hit the rest of the world too, right?
Exactly.
You're getting them in advance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about a question that's on everyone's mind right now is for women that might be looking at going to Europe in the next little while. Do you all feel it's safe to travel to Europe, or what are you recommending to clients with regard to Europe and the situation in Ukraine? And Trish, could I start with you?
Well, people are still planning on going. I haven't had a lot of people overly concerned with it, and we're back in the same spot that we were 2 years ago of all of my trips are about done for the summer, and we're hitting final payments this week and next week. And I have to say, this year they haven't asked me. We've talked a little bit about it, but I think you can look at the map. And I think sometimes people forget that Ukraine is a long ways from France or from Ireland. We're just making sure that we're booking everything refundable. We're making sure they have travel protection as well. But from at least from a U.S. standpoint, people are still traveling. They still want to travel. They're aware of what's going on, of course, in Russia and Ukraine, but they're not letting it stop them right now. And maybe if we hadn't been through the last 2 years, they would be more cautious. But I found that most people are just so ready to go that they're willing to take that risk.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sheila, what about Canadians? And I know you work with Americans as well, but
yeah. Well, I did 4 final payments for river cruises today for 2022. So people are still booking, they're still confirming. Certainly Baltic cruises have been canceled right now. A lot of cruise lines are canceling. I think all of them have canceled any Russian ports. But I give the example of a lady I was talking to who was about to do a final payment on a Monaco cruise, Grand Prix. The Grand Prix is going, called a cruise line still operating the cruise. And I shared with them the client's concern. Okay, obviously none of us have a crystal ball. None of us want to be in this position we're in. And we're all praying for a swift as resolution as possible. But in that cruise line's example, they had a cruise that was doing Black Sea. That cruise has been canceled. A new itinerary is being proposed. Clients can either do the new itinerary or they can get a refund. And that, if it comes to that, cruise lines will have to deal with something comparable to that. As my cruise line partner said to me, we don't want to put our clients at risk. We don't want to put us at risk. We're not going to take any undue, we're going to take all due precautions. We're not going to put people in a situation where we can't control it. But none of us have a crystal ball in terms of what's happening. If I have someone who is really uncomfortable and their final payment is close, I might speak to the partner and see if we can push out the cruise final payment. Or if they're really uncomfortable, see if we can move it to an alternate date.
Yep. And Carmelina?
I actually don't have anyone questioning anything yet. Most of the bookings that I have are Ireland, France, Portugal, Spain, which people are still interested in and people are still booking at this time. I think if they were looking, or if they had bookings into the, further east, Poland and all that, I think they would be canceling. But I think they're aware of what's happening. But as some of my clients have already said, I've had enough, I'm going. And revenge travel seems to be winning over non-revenge travel. So they've, as the very first thing that you said when we went on air is, we've been through everything. We've been through hurricanes, tornadoes. We've been through this. We've been through that. We just got through 2 years of this. And looking at what is happening in Russia, people are just thinking, okay, I'm still going to do what I want to do, but I'm just going to be cautious of where I choose to travel.
Yeah. And have a backup plan. Have a plan.
Okay.
Yeah. What if, are there alternatives? So are you seeing instead of this cruise, or it might be that cruise, or instead of this destination, it might be another destination? What kind of shifts do you see there?
So far, I've had people who are going to do some European cruises, and they're now shifting and they're doing South and Central America. So I'm finding I'm doing a lot more South and Central America, Paul Gauguin, that type of thing is where I'm finding people are going that way. So they're still traveling, saying they wanted to do an Eastern Europe trip, and they're saying, well, I still want to do a cruise, but now push me over to the other direction.
Yeah.
They're still traveling.
We see differences between regions too, right? Like we have Americans and Canadians on here today.
And we're in Ontario.
Yeah. And Americans were booking more during the pandemic, and Canadians were a little bit more cautious, mostly because the Canadian government said, do not travel. But we even see that in regions across Canada with provinces, right? We see people in Newfoundland and Victoria being more cautious than people in Ontario. And then people in Quebec were traveling more, and people in Alberta were like, I'm going, I don't care. So we're starting to see that come through with Europe and those other destinations too. It is still a time for people who were a little bit more nervous maybe to discover their own backyard. I mean, I'm booking a lot of people to Newfoundland, my home province, booking a lot of people on the Rocky Mountaineer in Canada. So, those bigger domestic trips were maybe put off last year with Canadians still being cautious, but they're getting booked now.
Yeah, there's so much.
Americans did that too in the last year. I don't book any domestic travel, but I know a lot of my colleagues were booking a lot of Western, up to Montana and Wyoming and Colorado, California.
Yeah.
They were really doing more domestic stuff if they didn't really feel good about leaving the country. Although I have to say for the US, Mexico has been huge for the last 2 years. People that have been booking Mexico, Americans have been going to Mexico like crazy.
Yeah.
I've noticed that the coach tour companies just in the last week have been advertising more of their Canadian choices, coach tours as well, which normally at this time they'd be pushing their Europe, but they're starting to push more of the Canadian choices.
Now I want to address a question that's in the chat about fees. And because I had an experience, and also what you will do and what you won't do. I had an experience where I tried to use a travel agent for a trip to the Bahamas a few weeks ago, and I was told that she would not work with me because I wanted to use airline points instead of paying the full ticket price. How does it work? How do fees work with you?
You want to pick one of us to go, or
I'll pick you? How about you, Sheila?
okay? Well, I mentioned already that I've worked hundreds and hundreds of hours for each client almost throughout the pandemic. So the past model for travel agents or travel advisors was typically you were paid a commission by a supplier. And that's because you did work for the supplier. You were representing their product. You were growing their market. You were answering the phone so they didn't have to. You were helping the supplier, and the supplier compensated you for that work you did for them. However, that did not cover the work you did for the client. And I do an awful lot of work for the client, both before, during, and after a trip. And the services I provide the client, the commission I got from the supplier was no longer sufficient to cover that. I charged fees previously, before COVID. I might have waived them an awful lot more before COVID. I can't do that anymore because the services I provide my clients, the commissions I get from suppliers 3 years down the road on a trip I've already rebooked 4 times, it's not enough to keep me in business. I'm not providing a favor to clients by working with them. I'm giving them a service. I'm assisting them in making their decision. I'm helping them buy. I'm sharing all my expertise and all of my connections, and I do charge a fee. The fees I charge are going to differ depending on the scope and the man hours of the work that I'm doing for the client. If a client, for me, wants to book their own air or book their own points, go at it. Sure, no problem. But I can't be responsible for that segment. And if there are issues or problems, then you're on your own, because if I'm not the advisor of record, I can't have access to that record.
Right.
But otherwise, I have a very upfront conversation with my clients. I let them know I'm on a fee plus commission basis of how I run my business, and my fees vary depending on the work I'm doing. My clients sign a service agreement. They're fully aware of the fees and when they're charged, and I'm very transparent.
That's great. Carmelina, I know you want to talk about this.
I'm trying to remember the year. I think it was 1997, but I can't remember correctly. I think it was 97. At that point, we were getting commission from everything we touched. It didn't matter if it was an airline ticket, a car rental company, whatever we touched, we were paid a commission from our supplier. And we'll just use the date 97 because I think it was 97. The airlines then decided that they're not going to pay us a commission anymore. So what was happening is travel agents, advisors, we were issuing airline tickets using our time, our paper, our everything, and not being compensated for it at all. At that point, I remember very distinctly that someone came down in our government and said we're allowed to charge fees, and there was a structure of what the fee should be. And it came back to, if you're making transactions at your bank, there's a fee. You're talking to your lawyer, your doctor is issuing a prescription for it, you're paying a fee. So that's when the fees started. I remember our fees were not very expensive, but I do remember that the start was $25. Since 1997, again, we'll use that date, I have always charged fees. If someone wants to do their airline ticket on their own, I always say, let me put it to you this way. If you book your own airline ticket, and then I'm going to do the rest of your package or your trip, your cruise, whatever it is, and something happens and there's a disconnect, I can't fix that. But if you allow me to book your ticket, then I can make sure everything's connected. If you want to do points, I will do your Aeroplan points for you or your WestJet points, provided I have permission to do that. If not, and you still want to book your own, I will give you the flights that I'd like you to book to match the rest of what we're doing. Now, be very clear. if you want me to do your airline ticket, whether it's points or not, straight off the bat on an economy class ticket, I am going to charge you $56.50 per ticket. So clients will say to me, oh, Carmelina, I don't want to stay on the phone with Aeroplan for 4 hours. You go ahead and do it. So if you offer to do the ticket for them, their points ticket, I feel that that's where the full service agent comes in. You can make sure everything's nicely packaged and connected, because, there's been that one too many times where they book, you book, it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden they're begging you to fix what they did wrong. I mean, I had somebody who booked 7 airline tickets to Vancouver online, the same 7, the same destination, same time, 7 times. And then begged me to fix it with WestJet. So I called WestJet saying, okay, this is a regular client. She wanted to do this on her own to prove she could do it herself. But as you can see, I know with the Privacy Act, I'm not allowed to touch it, but do you mind? So with the relationship that we have with the airline, they allowed to fix that ticket and cancel all the other 6, refund it, and then to keep the 1 ticket. So I do charge fees for it, depending on what I'm doing, but I do charge fees.
Yeah. And Trish, could you answer that too? And also maybe talk a little bit about travel insurance and how that works.
Okay, so in terms of fees, I have only been in the business about 8 years, and I started fees from the very start for a lot of the reasons that Sheila mentioned and Carmelina also mentioned. But I think what's interesting is that most people don't know how we get paid either. So if we take the time to explain to them how it works, then I think most people are very open to the fees and they understand it better if you just explain it to them. What I also like is by having fees and not being tied into a specific supplier, I'm trying to find the best place to book the trip for the client, and I'm not beholden to anybody who's going to pay me the highest commission. The challenge that I have with Europe is booking small hotels. So somebody had a question in there about paying a percentage of a trip in fees. And I do have one client that likes to work that way because he's a consultant and he gets it. And he says to me, book the trip and then charge me whatever percentage you think is fair, 10, 15% or whatever, so that I don't have to worry about chasing a commission from a hotel, or I don't have to worry about trying to find some commission on air or something like that. Plus he'll also pay, just a sort of some other advisors call it a plan to go fee. I don't know if you two gals ever do that, where they apply it to your trip. My fees are always non-refundable, whether you book the trip with me or not. And what that does too is that also, we put a lot of time into proposals and doing the right trip proposal for clients. And sometimes if you give it to them with a lot of information, they will take it and book it themselves. So again, you haven't been compensated for your work, for your context, for your experience. And so it's a little frustrating. I know that that's why a lot of advisors started doing fees, because they got burned a number of times. So that's just something to keep in mind when people talk about having a fee structure. So
this is how we make our living.
Understood. And could you just speak to insurance? I think it's different maybe in Canada versus the US. Have you sell insurance as well?
Just insurance, it's something from the start of my business that I always recommend for many reasons, even prior to COVID, because a trip is an investment. It's an investment of your time, it's an investment of your money. And I always sort of tell people that, if you have to cancel this trip one day before you leave, are you willing to lose $20,000? If you couldn't get this money back, are you willing to lose it? And then they start, then they kind of think about it a little bit. And then I say, and because everybody is always going on their trip for sure. Oh, I'm not going to cancel. I'm not, I'm going. I'm going to go on this trip no matter what. But, life happens. You get called to jury duty. You get in a car accident. Your mother gets sick, whatever. And what travel protection will do, of course, is they have all of these covered reasons that you can end up canceling for and get your funds back. So it's just cancellation, plus it's also getting sick in country, which I don't think anybody likes to be sick when you're not at home, right? or have an accident or have, break a leg or something. And I know in the US, most healthcare does not cover you the minute you leave the country. So sure, you could pay out of pocket, if you have enough on your credit card, like $20,000 to get yourself air evacuated back or something. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. So I always offer travel protection, usually third party. Every supplier will offer it as well. It is age dependent usually.
Yes.
So unfortunately, the older you are, the more it's going to cost you. So in the US, we have, so many different options. I think we talked about this, that there's websites, insuremytrip.com, where you can compare. And I just tell people, read the fine print, read the details. Don't just sign, don't just purchase without really reading it.
Yeah. Sheila, any thoughts on travel insurance? And it's a little different in Canada.
It is a little different in Canada, and we also have very strict rules and regulations about who we can sell to. I'm in Ontario, I can't sell to people in Newfoundland or Alberta, which is kind of ludicrous, but there we have it. We do have a setup to recommend to the company we work with to get a recommendation and assist the clients as best they can. Insurance is always very strongly recommended. And yeah, life happens. The example I used to give clients when I first started was a client who wanted to take his wife, who just had their third baby, on a very special trip to London. They were going to O2 to see a concert. And I'm like, okay, Jim, you really should buy insurance. He's like, nope, I got the grandparents lined up. The kids are all set. The wife has to be feted and dined and celebrated for this third baby. There's no way in hell I'm not going on this trip. The concert was to go to O2 to see Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson died. The trip got canceled.
Yeah. What about COVID insurance? What's happening with that right now? There's a question in the chat too about, there's a woman that submitted a claim for a cruise.
It depends on the insurance company and the state.
Yeah, it's a little hard to understand that question actually. Canceled. My cruise was canceled due to COVID and I submitted a travel claim, but was denied.
Is that to her credit card company, her
insurance company, or
yeah, it's best to follow up with your insurer, but everything has morphed and changed and evolved so much. If some companies were offering future cruise credits, that was considered adequate compensation as COVID wore on, so it depends on your insurance company.
There was several people emailed me questions because they couldn't be here today, but there was a question around insurance for longer stays. And is there any advice? I'll read you the question that she sent. Over the next 12 months, I plan to catch up on journeys missed. The plan is to spend 2 months in Europe, 3 months in Vietnam, and finally, knock on wood, take the twice canceled Antarctica trip. At my age, ensuring I'm adequately covered is important, especially if I have not acted my age. So thoughts on insurance for longer stays? Is it the same process as any other insurance, or is there anything different?
In the US or Canada, do you know?
This is, I am not sure if this is a Canadian or an American, actually.
In the US, most of the policies are only 30 days, generally. You can go ahead and do a policy up until about 48 hours before you leave. So you could do another policy then. In the US, they do offer annual policies as well, but I find they are very, very slim on their coverages. They even have travel advisor policies that you can purchase for the year. But like I said, the coverage is so low that I wouldn't actually recommend it.
Yeah, you can get, same thing here in Canada, you can get annual plans, and we do typically have dollar amount limits or time stay limits. Mm-hmm. But the thing with annual plans you have to be very careful with too is that they often have a per trip limit. Right. So your advisor would recommend, talk to you about that. And then you have to get into the situation where you're buying top-ups. So
one of the things I find important when it comes to insurance is for people, if they want to use their credit card insurance, or some of them have this amazing benefit package in their jobs. They want to use that insurance. My very, very first thing to say is, great, use your personal insurance, but do me a favor, find out what you're not covered for.
Mm-hmm.
Because if anything's going to happen, it will be for what you're not covered for. Going to what Sheila was saying, yes, being in Ontario, we're not allowed to sell insurance outside of our province. But we do now have the ability to sell just COVID pandemic insurance through Manulife. And even I'm finding that every single booking I'm making, if they're not buying the premium protection plan insurance or all-inclusive insurance, they are purchasing the COVID-19 insurance, which is great. If you want to use, again, your credit card, or you're part of the school board or a government employee and you want to use yours, what you don't have, 90% of the time, is any COVID coverage. Buy the COVID insurance, which is really not expensive, just that peace of mind. And that COVID insurance will only cover you while you're at destination.
Right.
The great thing about that COVID insurance is, if something happens and you don't go on that trip, or you cancel that trip, but as long as you haven't left, that COVID-19 insurance with Manulife is refundable.
Oh, wow.
Good tip. We only have a few minutes left, and I want to ask you one more question, and then I want to take some questions and go through the ones we have in the chat, because there are quite a few. A little bit about shifts in travel. What are you seeing happen now? We talked about slower travel or smaller groups. What are the kind of the things you're seeing happen that might be interesting to our travelers?
You mean post-COVID, or?
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm seeing people book bigger trips, right? We've been home for 2-3 years. We've been alone, my solo travelers especially. They want to take the big trip, the bucket list trip. You haven't spent your travel budget for 2 years, so you have a bit more money to spend on travel as well. One of my clients, Doris, I was talking to last week, was saying, she was 70 at the beginning of the pandemic. She lost her husband just before. She had planned to travel from 70 to 80. She was going to take whatever trip she could while she still could, was in good health, didn't have to worry about walking issues, those kind of things. Well, she said, Sheila, I've just lost 3 years. So now the trips that I was going to take next year and the year after, I have to go back and look at my list, and I'm going to take the biggest trip first, the longest trip, the one that's going to be the most, if I, to use the phrase, if I died tomorrow, which one would I be really upset that I didn't take? Take that one first.
More meaningful. I'm finding clients are looking at more meaningful trips, something that I'm going to get more out of emotionally, mentally, that type of thing. Also families. Families, as Sheila said, haven't traveled in 3 years. Instead of just mom, dad, and a couple of the kids, it's mom, dad, brothers, sisters, cousins, parents, my kids bringing their friends and all the rest of it. And they're renting, houses and villas, and again, more meaningful. And yes, a lot of people are taking longer trips, bigger trips, but I'm finding something more meaningful.
Yeah, Trish?
Also kind of the same, just I'm seeing more multi-generation trips of bringing the grandparents along, more so than I did previously. Europe is always big trips for people there. It's, they usually go at least 10 days, and sometimes, so most of them now are stretching into 3 weeks if they can do it. So I'm not seeing as many changes, but definitely people more, as Carmelina said, is more meaningful trips too.
Yeah, I think one of you told me there was a 180-day cruise that sold out.
Oceania, 30 minutes.
24. Yeah.
Yep.
30 minutes. And, that was for 2024.
180 days.
Like the 45-day, the river cruise, 45 days.
Yeah.
That thing sold out.
Seven rivers, different companies putting together. We're seeing the bigger trips. River cruising and expedition cruising in particular are really taking off too. I mean, I don't specialize in the really large mega ships. I do more small ship, river cruise expedition ship, but they are more popular anyway in a post-pandemic world because it's more intimate. It's, the largest river cruise ship has 180 people, and you have to be vaxxed, double vaxxed, triple vaxxed, depending on the country. It's already meeting the health and safety standards of any country it's sailing through. So if you're sailing through Austria and Germany has a higher requirement, it meets Germany's requirements. So river cruising and expedition cruising is really going to have even more of a lift than they had before the pandemic in a post-pandemic world.
That's great. Well, according to the last poll we did, 53% of women are planning a trip in the next 3 months internationally. 30% are not, and 17% not sure yet. So, so we'll see.
Do it, ladies. Do it.
Yes.
So let's take a couple questions from the chat, and if I'm just going to scroll through those quickly, and we'll try and answer those in the time we have left. Are travel advisor and travel agent the same? Are they in TICO?
Yes, we're all TICO.
All TICO, but it's a different mindset in how you run your business. We all run our own businesses in different ways. We're all regulated by whatever our regulatory body is. But for me, it's the advising aspect, which is the relationship more than the transaction.
Yeah, the US is not as regulated as Canada, I have to say. So I think you do have to be careful and vet your travel advisor and make sure that they are backed by usually a big company.
Here's one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carmelina.
I saw one of the questions. Travel Industry Council of Ontario. TICO, basically, in a nutshell, company you do business with, if they go belly up, TICO will take care of it. That's in a nutshell. And every travel agency, every tour operator, suppliers, we pay into TICO like, I guess you want to call it some sort of an insurance. So if that business goes out of business, then TICO will take care of the clients or whatever outstanding bills there are.
It's also set up that not anyone can sell travel. You have to be TICO registered to sell travel to anyone in Ontario. So someone who says, I want to bring a group of my friends on a yoga retreat. Well, that's fine, but you can't sell it to them.
Well, they can, and then they'll be arrested, and then they will be fined very, very large, especially if they're selling it out of the back of their car.
Yeah, it's definitely much stricter in Canada than the US. So that's why you do need to be careful with who you choose.
So ask for certifications, make sure.
Yes.
And it's also provincial, once again, in Canada.
In Canada, yeah. Well, and in the States too, there are seller of travel laws that in about 5 states. So you do need to have that in order to sell to people, say in California, that's one, Florida's one. So
here's a question. Booked river cruise 2 years ago in France, was rebooked twice and is now scheduled for end of April. Does a Canadian passport still need to be good for 3 months ahead of travel date?
I'd say 6. 6 at the end of your travel date.
Okay. How do I find, this is Denise, how do I find a good travel advisor, agent, consultant? The ones I used were not very good or proactive. I did more research than they did. They were totally useful and listening and late to inquire, even when I had to do a medical evacuation on my own.
Well, it's all about the relationship. Obviously, you didn't have a good relationship. That's really unfortunate. You got 3 fantastic people here, if I do say so myself, but it depends. I'm also a member of Virtuoso, which is a large luxury travel consortium. Perhaps the other ladies are members of consortia again. We have search engines where you can look at my profile, who I am, what I do, what I specialize in, and you can use that to help. And I have a discovery call with clients. Am I a good fit for them, and are they a good fit for me? And the decision about whether or not to work together is a 2-way street. There has to be value for both. So if you were talking to someone and didn't have that kind of conversation up front, maybe that's something you can improve going forward.
Almost like looking for a hairdresser. Ask your friends.
I think a
Ask your
financial
friends.
planner, like a
Ask your
financial
friends.
advisor, right? I mean, this is our money we're talking about too. It's not just, not just
Yeah,
profit.
because I really act as a fiduciary for my clients, right? Like I really, which is why all of us worked for hours for free, because we had that relationship and that understanding, respect, and concern for our clients' money. We take it very seriously.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's good places to find. There's like Sheila said, there's search engines. Travel Leaders is my agency. They have a big nationwide search engine where you go in and put in where you want to go and what your travel style is. Or ASTA, which is the American Society of Travel Advisors. They also have they're all members of ASTA, so you know that they've been vetted. So there's some good resources instead of just going google.com, where's a
Yep.
The travel industry is a serious business. We are dealing with people's money as well as, their memories. So when you're finding a travel agent or a travel advisor, yes, I say ask your friends, but that might still not be a good fit. I find that when I'm talking to someone and I'm listening to what they're saying, I will always say, our first conversation, we're just getting to know each other. By the time we have our second and third conversation, we're going to be best friends. And at that point, we'll know if we're going to work together forever.
Nice.
But yeah, this is a business. We do take it seriously, as Sheila said. And at the end of the day, there's this famous line, without a client, we don't have a job. There's no business.
I want to get through just a couple more questions. If I've already bought round trip flights from Europe, can I use a travel agent for the intra-European flights and hotels and cars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we prefer to have the whole package, though.
It depends
as
what you're
Carmelina
looking.
was saying, it's better to have the whole package done, and there's sometimes better value in having the whole package done too.
And also, if something misconnects, then we have control of it.
That's the biggest thing with so many schedule changes. Like we mentioned, the Russia situation and not flying over the Russia airspace is going to have knock-on impacts to flights around Europe and everywhere else, because a flight from Paris to Tokyo that used to be 11 hours is now 13 because you can't fly over 11% of the world. That kind of stuff, we're going to see schedule changes, route changes, equipment changes, all of that. So if we haven't booked a segment, then that can have impact and push your other segments that we are responsible for. So that's an individual advisor decision whether or not to take that on, but you can certainly find someone who would help you.
Here's an easy one. This one just happened a few weeks ago. I had clients who were going to be on a celebrity cruise out of Florida. They booked their own flight with WestJet, which is fine. I did the cruise and all the rest of it. I get a phone call saying, Carmelina, I just found out that my mom is going to pass away and I need to get home quickly. My first comment is, well, you made your own airline tickets. I don't think that they're going to talk to me. The response was, I waited 4 hours on the phone with WestJet. They didn't answer. I said, okay. I booked them a one-way ticket from Florida. I said, if you allow me, I will take care of the rest. So what I'm doing for them now is I'm trying to see if I can use the fact that this lady's mother did pass away to get a reimbursement on that ticket that she purchased. Even though I did not book her original ticket. Her comment to me was, I'll never do that again, Carmelina, just book my tickets. 4 hours in a panic, thinking, I need to get home now, and she couldn't do it.
Yeah, well, we forget how severely impacted airlines and travel has been. Just because we can travel again now doesn't mean it's back to the way it was.
It'll never be the same.
So there's less people working, less people answering phones. I want to get to this question. It's interesting. I need to travel for work. I need assistance with booking flights, trains, and cars. Is this something travel advisors do, or how would I pay for their services?
Sounds like a corporate agent.
Corporate.
Yeah, it sounds like corporate, someone, if that's all they need, but it's having the conversation with the advisor and figuring out what you need and whether or not they're a good fit. If I'm not a good fit for someone, I'll tell them after a conversation. I'll say, based on our conversation, I don't think the services I am offering are the best fit for you, but I do have a colleague I can pass you to. And, we do that back and forth in this industry, and it's to my benefit and the client's benefit to not accept business that is not the best for me.
And some agencies, like the one that I work for, McTavish Travel, we have 3 departments. We have a leisure department, we have a corporate division, which something like that, if I had picked up the phone, I can do it for her, or I can just send it right over to corporate. And then we have a humanitarian division. So a lot of agencies have that divide. So they've got different agents that do different roles. Yes, absolutely. That's something that every agent should be able to do. And then, of course, charge their fees.
Yeah. We're coming up to the end of our time. And I think if there are more new questions, I'm just looking quickly. I want to, there are quite a few more. So I want to let folks
know. Yes, Kathy Godfrey, without a travel aid advisor, you are your own. So that's an ensemble. That's what Ensemble says. Thank you. Our agency is part of Ensemble.
If you want to stay and have your question answered, we'll keep going and go through the rest of them. So, but I do want to thank you so much for being so transparent with all of your answers and the questions. And, as an entrepreneur myself, I really appreciate what you all do. And I know how hard it's been for all of us to get through this time. So let me go back to, there was an interesting one in here that I just wanted to, could someone just buy insurance through you?
Yes.
They could, but we would need to see the terms and conditions of the part of what they've booked that we haven't booked.
Yeah.
Someone's asking about fees. For me, it's based on the conversation I have with clients and the scope and the man hours involved. When I have a conversation with clients, I call it my discovery conversation. I actually share with them my value perspective, what I bring. I provide case studies and testimonials and the value of working with a travel advisor, why suppliers pay travel advisors, why you should work with a travel advisor, and why I think you should work with me. And then step through all that. And then based on the conversation I have with the clients, I share what the fees would be.
Ken, question. Sorry. Go ahead, Carmelina.
My fees are actually attached to my email, and they're pretty cut and dry, unless I'm doing a wedding group. Because wedding groups take a lot of time and energy, and it's not 1 hour, 2 hours. That turns into something that is 3 or 4 months down the road. So when I have to do a wedding group, then that's a conversation. But airline tickets, $56.50 per person. If it's a family of 5, then I might, bring that down. If it's a ready-made package, I have a set rate. If it's a custom package, then, that's usually around $100, $150 a person. It all depends on what Sheila said, time. Mm-hmm. But it's all in a list that I have, and I attach it to my emails.
There's a question, can Americans book with Canadian advisors? Does it matter what country you're in?
Yeah, I have Canadian clients. I mean, American clients as well as Canadian. The insurance is the tricky part.
Yeah.
I have Canadian clients that book in US dollars and American clients that book in Canadian. Sometimes that depends on the supplier we're using too.
Yeah.
There are some people asking for your contact info. So if you're able just to type that in the chat, that would be great. And I'll also include it we'll do a follow-up email with some of the things that I mentioned at the beginning that I didn't get around to putting in the chat. And then we'll take one more question. I'm just going through the list here. Thank you for the positive feedback. So the use of travel agents. So folks, 85% said they would consider using, I should end this. Consider using a travel agent in the future.
Terrific.
What was the percentage, Carolyn?
85%.
Nice.
That's good to see the number went up. I guess
significantly higher than our last survey. So
what you really have to think about is you want to be the expert on your trip and you want to plan the details. So why wouldn't you partner with someone who's an expert in all the details? So it's better to borrow expertise than to build it yourself.
Yes, just like we wouldn't work on our own cars, right?
Exactly. Or I don't know about you ladies, but I won't dye my own hair.
Oh, I've done that. It wasn't pretty. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this tonight and answer all these questions. I just want to remind folks on the call, if you're not already subscribing to JourneyWoman, please do. We love all of you. And we have a number of events coming up. We have a community call this Thursday that's all about planning post-pandemic trips. It's going to be hosted by Kathy Gottfried, who's one of our JourneyWoman Advisory Council members. We're doing a session next week on vacation rentals next Thursday night. And we have this wonderful book club every month. So if you're looking for new books to read, please join us on the third Wednesday of every month. And the last thing I want to mention is JourneyWoman is for the first time hosting a wellness retreat in October 2022 called Women's Travel Wisdom. We have some incredible women coming from all around the world, and I'll be sending out some more on that next week. But lots going on as we get ready to re-enter the world. And thank you again, those of you that donated and helps us cover some of the cost involved with this. And then we can also make some donations to Sunflowers for Peace and see what we can do to help a little bit in Ukraine. So thank you, all of you. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn, for allowing me to be part of it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye, ladies.